this on. I don't care. It's a back and forth thing. There's no ventilation. There's like half ventilation in here. So I'm gonna run what I gotta run. Alright. Okay, that's not where I'm supposed to go. How did I just lose all my... Oh, never mind, it was right here. Okay. Go here, which allows me to go here and go here. So I can go here and then go here. And then put you here. And then, no. Those are some interesting titles, but no. Okay. Let's get into this debacle, because we do have a game this week. I don't think we have a bye week for a while. We've been getting some late bye weeks, which honestly I don't mind. I like having the bye week more towards the later half of the season than earlier on. I'd rather just be able to compete consistently, and then you get that bye week, and then you're able to handle the rest. When you get an early bye week, that means the rest of the season is just the rest of the season. Then again, I don't know how the players feel about it. Excuse me. Maybe the players want an earlier bye week, or maybe they want a later bye week. As a fan, I prefer a later bye week. When is our bye week? Let me check that. Sorry, this has nothing to do with the upcoming game, because it's not like we have a bye week this week. We have a game, but I'm interested. Let's see. It's 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Week 14? Our bye week's week 14? Wow. I think our bye week is week 14. Huh. Okay, that's a late bye week. Isn't that a week later than what we had last year? Because wasn't our bye week last season week 13? Whatever. It don't matter, because bye week is far away from now. We're not getting that bye week until December, so it is what it is. Which is crazy. It's after the Eagles game. So we play the Eagles, get that bye week, and then we play the Giants. That's fun. But anyway, let's not waste any more time here. Let's get into this discussion, because we're going to be here for a while. What do you think about that Thursday night game? I love the NFC South so much because for some random reason, the NFC South is able to come up with some bangers when it comes to divisional matchups. That division is confusing, and at times it can be poor, it can be bad, and it can be god-awful. But damn it, that division can come up with some of the most interesting games we will see all year. An NFC South matchup is always a candidate for Game of the Year, and nobody understands why. It's like when those teams meet in that division, sparks are flying, game come down to the wire, and it's just like exciting all the way through. That game did hurt me though, because I have the Bucks winning that division, because it came down to me picking between the Bucks and the Falcons. I said the Falcons could win the division because they have all the talent in the world, and Kirk Cousins is a damn good quarterback. So with that combination, you would believe it would lead to a divisional win, which could very well happen. But I just like the Bucks because they were more consistent. They won the division round last year. They didn't really lose a lot of talent. I thought they'd probably come back and be a great team, similar to last year, and they have been that. That loss Thursday night, man, that was painful if you're a Bucks fan, because you had two opportunities to close the game out, and they blew it, man. Baker Mayfield played a great game, but his team let him down, man. The first opportunity to go close the game out, you fumble the ball. You give it right back to the Falcons. Second opportunity to close the game out, you get called on an offensive hold that knocks you out of field goal range. So you have two opportunities to put the game away, and you weren't able to put the game away. Then all the Falcons had to do was get to field goal range, and you allowed them to get into field goal range and then kick the game-time field goal. The fact that they were able to get that off and still spike the ball with a second is crazy. And then in overtime, they were cooked. That defense couldn't stop anything at that point. They were cooked. So it is what it is. That was a fantastic win by the Falcons. I find it very funny how Kirk Cousins broke the franchise record for most passing yards by a franchise by a Falcons quarterback, with this being a celebration of Matt Ryan's career. So, like, Matt Ryan had that record for the most passing yards in Falcons history in a game. Like, most passing yards in a game in Falcons history. Matt Ryan had that stat. And then Kirk Cousins comes in and then beats that and surpasses that on Matt Ryan's night, which is hilarious to me. But it is what it is at the end of the day. Anyway, we got a game to talk about. What's going on to my guys at the lunch break hot take? Man, we got a game to talk about here. It's week 5. It's week 5. It's actually week 5. Like, I sat and thought about that yesterday. Like, it's week 5. We're already a quarter of the way through the season. It feels like this season's a little bit faster. I'm not gonna lie. Like, it feels like the season's going by a little bit too quick. Like, slow down a little bit. Slow down. Slow down. We want to enjoy it. It felt like football just got back, and now all of a sudden it's week 5. Like, how is a quarter of the season already done already? What happened? And I ain't gonna lie, it's getting scary, man. Time's going by fast. It was slow in the off season. Like, from March to June, it was slow. And all of a sudden we got to July, and it's like, it's intermediate, but as soon as we got to training camp, everything's just been flying. And now all of a sudden, we're 5 weeks into the season. Like, we're 5 weeks into the season. I woke up yesterday and I'm like, it's week 5. How are we 25% into the season already? That's kind of crazy. That's kind of crazy, but man, it is what it is. Just slow down a little bit. Slow down a little bit. We want to enjoy football, man. We want to enjoy this season. Slow down a little bit. But that's how it is with football, man. Football, you play it once a week. Your team plays once a week, and there's really only 3 days where football's played. But somehow, time just goes by fast. And it's been like that for the Ravens. All of a sudden, you started the season 0-2. And now you're 2-2 with a chance to go to 500 for the first time this season. Which leads me into this discussion. Great way to tie things together. Ravens, Bengals, week 5 in Cincinnati. Baltimore sitting at 2-2 on the season, looking to go to 3-2. And then Cincinnati sitting at 1-3 on the season, looking to go to 2-3. And also kind of get closer to that second place aspect of the AFC North to try to climb back in and get closer to where Pittsburgh is, try to take the division from them. So this is a important game. It's a tough game. It's a must-win game for Cincinnati. I'd argue it's a must-win game for both teams because, again, Baltimore's position in the AFC North will fluctuate depending on how this week goes. The very worst scenario for Baltimore is they lose this game against Cincinnati. Because if Baltimore loses to the Bengals, they drop to 2-3 and they're 4th in the division. However, because of how things could shake up on Sunday night with the Steelers and Cowboys, if Baltimore was to win this game and Pittsburgh was to lose to the Cowboys, Baltimore takes first place in the AFC North. So we can be as high as first place or as low as 4th place in the AFC North after this Sunday is passed. So, you know, the division's going to be mixed up. It's going to fluctuate this week depending on how things go. Then again, who knows? If Cincinnati loses and Cleveland loses, and Pittsburgh wins, nobody moves because that means it'll just be the same situation that we had, last week. But a lot of things are riding on this game. Part of me feels like this could be one of those scenarios where it's a nail in the coffin type situation for the Bengals because if they go to 1-4, it feels like the season's over. But technically, the season is not over until you're officially eliminated. If you get a scenario where the Bengals are 1-4 after Sunday, do you think the season's truly over for the Bengals? Part of me wants to be like, yeah, considering the fact that they have a schedule where they still have to take on Kansas City. Let me look at Cincinnati's schedule when you actually look at it. Because, again, they would still have to face off against Baltimore again. And depending on how that matchup goes, they could end up losing both times to the Ravens, which would put them in a worse hole than they're already in right now, assuming they do lose on Sunday. They've got the Giants, that's a winnable game. They've got the Browns. That is a winnable game, but Cleveland has had Joe Burrow's number. I think he's 1-3 or 1-4 against them. That's not an easy game. They got Philadelphia. Philly is kind of half and half, but it's possible the Eagles can win that game. The Raiders, who knows how that game's going to go. Then they got us again, Thursday Night Football. That's another opportunity where the Ravens could try to beat them. They got the Chargers, they got the Steelers, they got the Cowboys. I don't think either one of those games are going to be easy for the Bengals. The Titans, I expect them to win that. The Browns, the Broncos, and the Steelers. So you're already early on in the season when you've lost to the Chiefs, you lost to the Commanders, and you've lost to the Patriots. Losing to the Ravens is going to give you 4 losses on the season, with 2 of those losses being in the AFC. There's so much that kind of rides on this for Cincinnati. It feels like they have to win this game to get their season back on track. But it's not the end of the world. Just taking a look at their schedule after Baltimore, it's not the worst schedule in the world. Let me just take a look and let me see how many games I can actually predict and say they can win. Let's give them a win against the Giants. Let's give them a win against the Raiders just because. Let's give them a win against the Titans. Let's give them a win against what the? Oof. So Giants, that's 1. Raiders, that's 2. Chargers. You know what? I'll do the Chargers. Let's give them 4 wins here. We'll do the Giants. We'll do the Raiders. We'll do the Chargers, and we'll do the Titans. That's 4 wins that can help. So that could put them at 5 wins, and they'll be at 4 losses. The rest of these games, other than Philadelphia, okay, Broncos. So the Broncos is another one. So I'm gonna give them 5 wins. That can get them to at least 6 wins on the season. That means, at best, they're gonna have to. If they lose to Baltimore, at best, they have to find a way to split the rest of it. So if they can get a win against the Ravens, a win against the Steelers, and a win against the Browns, that could put them at 9 wins on the season. Because I don't know if they're gonna beat the Cowboys and Eagles. And if you find a way to sweep one of these guys, I could see 10 wins here. I think the schedule does favor Cincinnati. The schedule favors Cincinnati to the point where even if they drop to 1-4, I don't think they're out of the race. We've seen situations where teams are 1-4 or 1-5 and they fight their way back into the season and go to the playoffs. I'll never forget the 2015 Kansas City Chiefs that started 1-5, won 10 straight games, finished the season 11-5, and went to the playoffs. So I don't think this is a situation where the season is over if Cincinnati's sitting at 1-4 after this game. But it is one of those dangers that can creep up on your mind because you're not guaranteed. And considering the fact that a majority of the rest of their season is divisional games, and if you take a look at how Cincinnati's performed, they actually have a record under 500 in these divisional games. They have not done well against their division. They have with Joe Burrow, he's 500 against the Ravens. You know, that because that has to count with Lamar not being there. He has a record under 500 against the Browns, a really bad record. And then he's, I think, a game above 500 against the Steelers. So there's a lot, man. There's a lot in that situation. Overall, they're under 500 when it comes to how they fared against the AFC North. So those matchups aren't guaranteed wins for Cincinnati. However, they do have a chance to be able to get themselves into this. But it just feels like it just feels like the division is so dicey this year. You don't know how things are going to go. In Cincinnati, they've been dicey this year, so you don't know if they're guaranteed to win those. Because of that, this is a must-win game. As for Baltimore, their schedule does not get easier. What's going on, Yolanda? Appreciate you stopping by. With Baltimore, their schedule, depending on how you look at it for the rest of the year, I don't think it's going to be an easy schedule. Because, again, after the Bengals, they got the Commanders. However you look at that is however you look at that. We'll talk about that next week. Then you've got the Buccaneers, and the Buccaneers are playing good football, so we'll talk about that. You've got the Browns, you've got the Broncos, you've got the Bengals again, the Steelers, Chargers, Eagles, Giants, Steelers again, Texans, and then Browns. That's not the easiest of schedules, but it is manageable. So Baltimore in this case, if they were to fall to 2-3, it's not over for them. They can still get back in it, and they'll still be relatively fine because their schedule, I think, favors them. But you don't want to play those type of scenarios. We talked about this after the Ravens went 0-2. They had to run the gauntlet. Go 3-0. Go to Dallas and beat the Cowboys, play on Sunday Night Football and beat the Bills, and then go to Cincinnati and beat the Bengals. We talked about that after the loss of the Raiders. You started 0-2, you win 3 straight, you're right back to where you were last season at 3-2 after 5 games. Baltimore handled their business against the Cowboys, though they nearly blew it. They also destroyed the Bills. Now you got to get this 3rd game here. You go to 3-2, you put yourself in a good position. So, knowing the situation surrounding both teams and knowing that the margin of error isn't really huge for either side, this game is going to be intense. I think this will be a tougher matchup for Baltimore than the Bills game. And I think this is going to be an even bigger test for the Ravens than the Buffalo game, just because this is a divisional rival that has the tools to really do damage against you. In terms of matchups here, I think there's only one actual matchup we have to focus on. I think the matchup for this game will have to be the Ravens defense versus Cincinnati's offense. Now, I will say this, Cincinnati defensively has been terrible this year. They can't stop the run. Cincinnati has been unable to stop the run. Week 1, they did a decent job stopping the run, but the Patriots don't have anybody running the ball well. Week 2, they sat back, and it's week 2. Pacheco's a good back. But he had a good running game. He scored on them. Week 3, the Commanders ran all over the Bengals and scored 3 rushing touchdowns. They did whatever the hell they wanted to that defense. And then last week they got their first win, but the Panthers, they still ran the ball well. Hubbard still was able to run for over 100 yards on that Bengals defense. So I would have to look at Cincinnati and say their defense is where the issue comes in for this team. And because they've been so poor, I don't know if you look at that as much as a huge matchup here in this situation. I think with Baltimore figuring something out with their offense in terms of how they want to utilize Derrick Henry, they're going to be in a much better position to be able to handle Cincinnati's defense and be able to consistently move the football and put points on the board. I'm not necessarily concerned about that aspect, but we do have to talk about that. However, on the flip side, Baltimore's defense has been very poor against the passing game. Week 1, Patrick Mahomes didn't play a fantastic game, but at the end of the day, Patrick Mahomes was still able to get whatever he wanted against the Ravens defense. And the biggest collapse that ultimately kind of changed the whole direction of the game, the worthy touchdown where he was wide open. Kyle Hamilton missed the assignment there. That was supposed to be where he was supposed to be in that area to prevent that. No one's there. Miscommunication leads to a wide open Worthy for a touchdown. Week 2, they let Gardner Minshew come into Baltimore and do whatever he wanted to do in the fourth quarter. Devontae Adams was cooking. Nobody could cover him. So it was bad to see the passing defense be that poor in the fourth quarter and just get smoked. And then week 3 was the biggest example of this because they were doing well for 3 quarters, but in the fourth quarter, they let Dak Prescott get whatever he wanted. Dak Prescott finished the game with nearly 400 yards passing and 3 passing touchdowns. This has been one of the worst secondaries in football through the first quarter of the season. And that's because they just haven't been doing a good job in coverage because the miscommunications have been so frequent. And again, there's a reason for that. You've got a new defensive coordinator in Zachary Orr. It makes sense. But you have the same guys out there. The secondary has not changed. What's different in the secondary? There's no Ronald Darby, which I'll admit that definitely feels a little bit of a loss. And there's no Geno Stone. But you replace those guys. You got an Eddie Jackson and you got Nate Wiggins. So you're not in a situation where you didn't replace those guys with solid pieces. You did. So there should be no reason the defense performs as poorly as they did. Now, if there's any good news here, last week, Sunday Night Football in Baltimore against the Buffalo Bills, we saw this defense shut down Josh Allen in the passing game. Josh Allen and the Bills couldn't consistently run the ball on the Ravens. Now, again, Ravens' run defense, not an issue here. We have one of the better run defenses in the league. We have one of the better pass rushing units in the league because they've been doing a great job stopping the run, and they've been doing a great job getting to the quarterback through the first quarter of the season. I'm not bringing that up as a matchup issue here. The Bengals are a running team. They can run the ball, but they're not relying on the running game. And I don't think the running game is going to be a huge impact for Cincinnati here. That's not their bread and butter. They'll try to run the football, just to stay honest, but they're not going to be looking to run like that. So the Ravens' run defense, they're going to do their job and make sure no running game's happening there. They're going to turn Cincinnati into a one-dimensional team, which works to Cincinnati's favor because they have the tools to be a one-dimensional team in which they just rely on the passing game. So the running defense is going to be fine. The pass rushers should be able to get to Burrow. But the secondary is where the questions are. They did a great job last Sunday night in shutting down the Bills' offense. But here's the thing. When you take a look at the Bills' receivers, none of these guys are made men. Coleman's nice. He's a rookie. But Coleman is nice. However, he's not a made man yet. Shakir is solid, but he's not a made man yet. These guys are not top tier quality weapons. So even though the Ravens defense shut down Josh Allen in that Bills passing attack, I don't think that was a true test for the Ravens secondary because you weren't dealing with guys that put fear in your heart. You weren't dealing with guys that are made players, that are star players. But this week in Cincinnati, you're dealing with that. Because you've got a Jamar Chase and you've got a T. Higgins. Jamar Chase is one of the best receivers in the game. And T. Higgins is not that far behind. You've got two top 15 wide receivers, arguably top 10, depending on how you look at it. These guys are made men. They're bona fide weapons. So this is going to be a bigger test for the Ravens secondary. And I think that's what the match is really going to come down to. The Cincinnati Bengals passing attack, so their receivers versus the Ravens coverage in the secondary. They're going to be tested. They are absolutely going to be tested. It's going to be Jamar Chase and T. Higgins versus a Marlon Humphrey and a Brandon Stevens alongside Nate Wiggins and whoever's in the secondary there, you know, with Hamilton, with Marcus Williams, with Eddie Jackson, whoever you're going to throw back there. The secondary is going to have to prove that they are officially back. I know it's easy to say, oh, they stopped Josh Allen, they're officially back. But none of those receivers put fear in your heart. They're not made men. They're not. They're not top tier guys. At least not yet. However, this week, you're going up against the top tier weapons. These are legit guys. Burrow can deliver it with the best of them. And he's got a Jamar Chase and a T. Higgins to throw the ball to. So this is going to be the week where we see a true test of the Ravens secondary. How well are they going to perform, and are they truly back to where they needed to get to? They said there was some miscommunication issues. They had to get that fixed. They felt last week's performance was a good step towards helping them get back to fixing things properly and tightening up what they need to do in the secondary. And I agree, that was a good look. But now this is a real test. Because when you're going up against Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, if you make any type of mistake against those guys, you're going to give up points. That's just how it is. So I believe the biggest test in this game is going to be Cincinnati's passing attack versus Baltimore's secondary. And if Baltimore is able to win that matchup and shut this down, this game can get ugly. Because I think that's the only way Cincinnati is going to keep up with Baltimore. When we take a look at the flip side, Baltimore's offense versus the Bengals defense, the matchup there is the Ravens rushing attack versus the Bengals front seven. How well can the Bengals front seven do at stopping this Derrick Henry Lamar Jackson combination? So when you take a look at it, the Ravens offense, which by the way, I'm probably going to have another discussion video about this. I'll see what they do this week, but I might have to make another discussion video. Not this, another, but I might have to make a discussion video in regards to the next level that the Ravens can take this offense to. Because the running game, I think they figured this out. But the passing game, there's an element in the passing game that they have not fully explored yet. They're starting to, but they have not fully explored that. It comes down to the play-action passing game when they are running 12 personnel, when they are under center, and you know Derrick Henry's in the backfield. Utilizing the play-action passing game in that scenario can be so lethal because it's just free money. It's free real estate. Because the defense is going to focus in on Derrick Henry and receivers are going to be open. You're stretching the field. They're putting an emphasis on Derrick Henry. It's going to open up lanes for these receivers and allow Lamar to deliver the ball down the field. That's an element in the passing game they have to reach. I'll talk about that more later on. And I want to see what they do this week to expand on that. Because if you've noticed, the last 2 weeks, they've started to run a little bit of play action from under center. And it's led to some good results. If Baltimore can master that to an extent, this offense will be truly lethal. But I'll save that for another time. So the matchup here, Baltimore's rushing attack versus Cincinnati's their front seven. Now let me see. Let me take a look here. I want to check something on Twitter about the Bengals. Because the Bengals have been banged up defensively. Let me check this out. I had seen this in terms of some of the guys. Okay. So there was a couple guys that were on the injury list for the Bengals defensive line. Trey Hendrickson, Miles Murphy, McKinney Jackson, and B.J. Hill. These are guys that were on the injury list. I believe some of these guys have actually missed time. All four of these guys that I just named, who are some of the best players on that defense for Cincinnati, especially for that front seven, all four of these guys we just named, they will play against Baltimore. So Cincinnati understands what Baltimore is going to try to do. They're going to run the ball with Derrick Henry. We don't need to pretend. It's not complicated. The Ravens' offense is going to run the ball with Derrick Henry. It took them 3 weeks, but the Ravens finally figured out how to properly utilize Derrick Henry. And by the way, anybody that was saying Derrick Henry was washed, you owe that man an apology. We sat here week 1 and discussed this with y'all. The ones that were trying to say he was washed, we were explaining to y'all that 1, the offensive line was doing a terrible job blocking, and 2, the Ravens were not utilizing Derrick Henry properly. But y'all wanted to sit back and say he was washed. They weren't letting this man run the ball in the fourth quarter in games 1 and 2 of this season. Against the Chiefs in the fourth quarter, he didn't get the ball. Against the Raiders in the fourth quarter, he didn't get the ball. But y'all want to sit back and say he was washed because the Ravens weren't properly utilizing him. Yeah, y'all owe that man an apology. It took the Ravens 3 weeks, but they finally figured out what they should be doing with Derrick Henry. Let's work to his strengths. Let's give him the ball in spots he likes the ball in. And guess what that's resulted in? Over 300-plus yard rushing and, 4 touchdowns in 2 weeks. That's what happens when you work to the strengths of a Derrick Henry. He destroys defenses. And when he's right next to Lamar Jackson, it makes things even tougher for you. So Baltimore is starting to build their identity, and they're having an understanding of what needs to work. Still a work in progress, which is why when people are trying to say Baltimore is one of the best teams, I don't want that title. Give it to someone else. I think the Ravens are still a work in progress. The Ravens are never one of the best teams in football in September. Come back December and we'll have that conversation. That's when you test them. The Ravens in December, and that's when they solidify who they are. Not in September. It's a long season and they have to work through a lot of things. So Baltimore right now is still a work in progress. They've got things to work out. Come December, we'll know what this team is. Anyway, it took them 3 weeks to realize what they needed to do with Derrick Henry and figure out, we got to run the ball like this and work to his strengths. So that's a good thing. It's good to see that they're actually utilizing him the way he's supposed to be utilized. That's good. Past that, not much to say in the passing game here because the Ravens haven't really thrown the ball that much. They've figured out things over the last 2 weeks, which has led to Lamar not throwing the ball as much as he normally would. It feels like we've gone back to 2019, where we're leaning into the aspect of running the ball so much, which again, I don't find that to be bad because we wanted to return to that 2019 mentality. That's where we're at our best. We don't need to be throwing the ball 40-plus times. That's not how our offense operates. If we're running the ball for 200-plus yards, I don't need Lamar Jackson throwing another 200-plus. If we're nearly averaging 300 yards rushing. Over the last 2 weeks, it's been nearly 300 yards rushing. Why would I need Lamar to throw for another 200-plus yards? You're not going to get that. You're not. So when you're not throwing the ball that much because you're dominating in the run game, you get an identity. And the identity works for the Ravens. It's similar to what the Ravens had in 2019. However, there needs to be a twist with this. And that's where we look at Todd Monken. You never wanted to move off that aspect that you got in 2019, but you needed to have a guy that knew what he was doing in the pass game. And Todd Monken knows what he's doing in the pass game. Though I don't always agree with some of the play calls he does know what he's doing in the pass game. The final product of the Ravens offense will be this new aspect of the running game that's dominant, with the play calling passing mindset that you had from 2023. Don't take away from the passing game that you had in 2023. That passing game got you to the AFC Championship game alongside running the ball well. The play calling and the passing schemes that you were able to run last year, you need to incorporate it onto this new team. Because now you have this dominant running game. If you can incorporate that to the passing game while also making tweaks and utilizing the play action game, you've got something there. But in terms of this game, I think it's far too early to see the Ravens get to that final product. Come December, we'll see. But in this game, I expect the Ravens to utilize the run game. They're going to hand it to Derrick Henry. They're going to be running the ball. You'll see Lamar utilizing the zone read. He's going to keep it a couple times and go take it a couple yards because Cincinnati's going to have trouble dealing with stopping both Lamar and Derrick Henry. And another thing that's been incorporated into the offense is the utilization of Justice Hill. It seems like the Ravens realize that they need to be incorporating him more. Like I said last year, Justice Hill has come a long way. That season he had last year, it was unfortunate that Keaton Mitchell went down. But that was a blessing in disguise for Justice Hill because the Ravens figured out that this guy needs to be on the field, especially when it comes to the passing game. Now, you can utilize Derrick Henry in the passing game, but with Justice Hill, the ability and capability he has shown on the field, when you try to utilize him in the passing game, he's got to be there. He's come a long way. And there's a reason why they give him his extension. He deserves it, which is why he's out there more. So now, Cincinnati's going to come into the game. They've got to deal with Derrick Henry. They've got to deal with Justice Hill. And they've got to deal with Lamar Jackson. That's going to be a lot. Good news is they're getting some help. A lot of their guys are coming back that were on injury on that defense. So they're going to have a majority of their players come Sunday. However, I don't know if it's going to be enough. I don't know if it's going to be enough. But let's say this is a situation where the run game is somewhat contained. If that's the case, we got to see how Todd Monken is going to incorporate last year's passing game to this year's team. And that's where you start utilizing the play action passing game. I still think we have to find a way to get Isaiah Likely involved more. We've got to get Zay Flowers involved more. We've got to find a way to get Mark Andrews involved. And they're starting to utilize Bateman a little bit more. We got to give him more opportunities. He also has to catch the ball. But we've got to give him more opportunities. I want to see the Ravens start to incorporate some things in the passing game. I don't know if this is going to be the week, but I do think there will be some opportunities for us to get something going down the field against the Bengals secondary. The Bengals are not a good defense. They're not a good defense. They have a fantastic offense led by a top-tier quarterback, but their defense is not good. If Baltimore can't take advantage of this poor defense, they deserve the loss. If they can't take advantage of this poor defense, they deserve to lose. And I'll give them credit. The defense in Week 2 against Kansas City did show up and should have won them the game. But Week 1, they did show up against the Patriots and held them to 16 points. But the last 2 weeks, they've been getting smoked. They've been getting smoked on the defensive end. Even though they won that game against the Panthers, they're not doing a great job stopping the run. So the matchup here again is the Ravens running game versus that front seven. And if you ask me, Baltimore has the advantage clearly. And if Baltimore is not able to put up points consistently against this defense, that's where we have a problem. So I think keys to the game for the Ravens is to stick to this new identity of running the football as long as it is effective and working. You want to run the football. Get Derrick Henry involved early like you did against the Bills. So run the ball. Next up, protect the football. Don't turn it over. Obviously, you can't fumble, can't throw picks. You got to play a clean game. You do not want to give extra possessions to the Bengals. You want to make sure you continue to give them as limited time as possible. So run the football, protect the football. I would say look to get something going downfield. This is where you incorporate the play action passing game when you are running 12 personnel. We're seeing moments like that where guys are getting open. Like we're watching Isaiah Likely get open in space. You saw that play action passing moment with Lamar to Zay for like not Zay, Lamar to Likely for about 25, 26 yards. You can get so many more of those opportunities if you utilize the play action passing game. So that is an aspect we need to do. Run the football, play a clean game by making sure we don't turn the ball over. Take advantage of these opportunities in the passing game when they are putting an emphasis on Derrick Henry, and then limit the penalties. Look, guys, it's Week 5. We're one of the most, if not the most, penalized teams in football right now. That is going to come back and bite us if we don't get it together. Last week they did a little bit better, but 8 penalties is not that much different from 11. Let's be honest. They need to limit the penalties. We cannot continue to see these holding calls. We cannot continue to see these false start calls. We cannot continue to see these illegal formation calls, though that has slowed down. We need to get it together. We have got to stop committing so many penalties. So that's it for the offense. Run the ball. Establish that early on. Get something going in the pass game. Take advantages of those moments where they zone in on Derrick Henry to get something going downfield. To an Isaiah Likely, to a Zay Flowers, to a Rashad Bateman. get something going in the pass game. Play a clean game by not turning the ball over. You don't want to give extra possessions to Cincinnati's offense. And then limit the penalties. We've got to show discipline. We've got to play a clean game. On the defensive side, number one has to be containing these guys. You're not going to stop them. You're not going to completely shut them out. Jamar Chase is going to get his. T. Higgins is going to get his. And I'll say it. We've had moments where we've shut down Jamar Chase and T. Higgins cooks us. And we've had moments where we've shut down T. Higgins and Jamar Chase goes off. You're not going to stop both of them. So what you need to do is limit their production as much as possible. Take a page out of Washington for much of the game. They double teamed the hell they did. They double teamed the hell out of Jamar Chase after they gave up that first touchdown. Because on the opening drive, the Commanders, who again have a very poor defense, they gave up a touchdown on the opening drive, a deep ball to Jamar Chase because they tried to play one-on-one on him. I know we've got better corners and we've got a Brandon Stevens that can keep up with Jamar Chase. And last year, he actually did a really damn good job in shutting him down. I got you on that. You've got a Marlon Humphrey that can play with the best. I get that. And you got a young rookie Nate Wiggins that's doing well so far. I understand you've got good talent at the corner position, but let's not go too far in playing with this. Obviously, the matchup is going to be Brandon Stevens on Jamar Chase and Marlon Humphrey on T. Higgins. That's kind of what they've been running for a while now. They don't really like putting Marlon Humphrey on Jamar Chase. They'll put Brandon Stevens on him, and Brandon Stevens done a damn good job on him. So obviously, that's going to be the matchup. But I think in this type of situation, you might want to look to put a bit of a double team on Jamar Chase and say, T. Higgins, beat Marlon Humphrey one-on-one. If you can consistently do that, you got it. And with the way Humphrey's been playing this year, especially since we have him in the slot, I don't know how much T. Higgins can beat Marlon Humphrey in that situation. Because when when Marlon Humphrey's playing in the slot, he don't get beat. It's when he's playing to the outside as a corner is when he's getting beat. But when he's in that slot and he gets to work inside the boundaries, he's cutting everything off. And that's where T. Higgins is going to operate. Because you're going to have your main outside guy, for the most part, be Jamar Chase. And yeah, at times we'll see T. Higgins go outside, but he'll operate in the slot. So it's going to be Marlon Humphrey versus T. Higgins and Brandon Stevens versus Jamar Chase. And that should be interesting. But I do think they may attempt to put a double team on Jamar Chase, depending on how he performs. Now, Brandon Stevens is just cooking him and just straight up shutting him down. They'll just take their chances to stick with that. But I don't think Jamar Chase will be contained in this game. So I think, with the defense, number one, you have to limit the big plays. You cannot let Jamar Chase get loose. You cannot let T. Higgins go off. So you've got to limit the big plays. Number two, you need to be able to generate turnovers. The less possessions the Bengals offense has, the better of a chance we win this game. Yeah, if you're able to create turnovers, you're going to put the Bengals in a bad position. So we have to find a way to create turnovers. We're doing a good job at that. We're getting some picks. We're stripping some footballs out of quarterbacks' hands. We're generating turnovers, so that's a good thing. We're also doing another good thing, which leads me to number three. You've got to put pressure on Joe Burrow. Get him on the ground. We did a good job with that last season. I expect us to do a good job with it this season. Kyle Van Noy is playing out of his mind. I expect him to get to Burrow at least once. Adafe always having a good start to the season. He might get to him once. Matabike's playing well. He might have a shot at him. I want to see our pass rushers constantly put pressure on Joe Burrow to potentially make a mistake or try to force a ball into one of his two guys that he trusts in, and there's somebody there in the secondary that's ready to cover it up and get a pick. Maybe we get one of those situations. If he tries to force the ball down the field, I think we could see a Kyle Hamilton interception in this situation. So I would say for the defense, number one, limit the big plays. Number two, generate turnovers. Number three, put the pressure on Burrow. Get him on the ground as much as possible. Force him to make mistakes. Other than that, defensively, I guess try to stop the run if they try to establish that, because they want to at least be honest in the run game. So stop the run, which is what I expect them to do. If the Ravens are able to do these things, they should be able to win this game. It won't be an easy matchup, but I do think the Ravens have the capabilities to get it done. They have the advantage here. Offensively, they have the tools to really, really just decimate that defense that Cincinnati has. And Cincinnati's going to have some guys back. So Cincinnati's job is to be locked in on the run game. They need to be laser focused on the run game. The front seven has to lock in on stopping Derrick Henry, and they have to trust in their secondary to stop these pass catchers. That's all Cincinnati can do. That's all they can do. They're not going to be able to shut down everybody. but they're going to have those opportunities, and they have to take advantage of it. They are going to zone in on Derrick Henry to stop him as much as possible, and they're going to trust in their secondary to hold up against these receivers. That's the defensive game plan for Cincinnati. They'll also be looking to force turnovers, so we do have to be careful with that. But the main two things is to stop the run at all costs and trust in their secondary to hold up against these receivers and make stops when they need to in key situations. That's the game plan for the Bengals defense. For the Ravens offense, stick to the running game, dominate, play a clean game, don't turn the ball over, limit the penalties, and punish the defense when they try to put too much attention on Derrick Henry that they forget we have pass catchers on this team. So that's just it. That's pretty much it for the offense. Defense, again, limit the big plays, put the pressure on Joe Burrow and force him to make mistakes, generate turnovers, and get Joe Burrow to the ground. Also try to stop the running game. That's pretty much it. If the Ravens are able to do this, I think the Ravens will win this game, and they will go to 3-2. Now, in terms of how this game's going to go, I honestly don't know. I believe the Ravens' run game is just going to be too much for Cincinnati to deal with. I think Derrick Henry is going to have himself another great game. He's going to go over 100 yards. Lamar Jackson is probably going to utilize the wheels in this game. I think he's going to be around 60 to 70 rushing yards himself. He's going to have a couple touchdowns, probably 2 through the air, maybe 1 through the ground. The passing game will have their opportunities to shine, and I expect these receivers to make the best of it when they get those moments. I think Cincinnati's defense is going to have moments where they do try to make stops, but at the same time, I don't know how many stops they're going to be able to make against this Ravens defense. Not this Ravens defense, against this Ravens offense when the Ravens are just torturing them by running the ball on a consistent basis with Derrick Henry. They're going to utilize their backs to their full potential, and that's going to be a tough matchup and a tough ordeal for the Bengals to deal with. I've seen so many people sit back and say it's going to be an offensive explosion because they do not believe the Bengals defense is going to stop anything. They need Joe Burrow to play a perfect football game if they're going to win, and I agree with that. If Joe Burrow plays perfect football, they have a great chance to win this. But if he's out there making mistakes early on, the Ravens can pack him up. I think that's a very clear situation. If Joe Burrow plays his best, they have a great chance to win. Doesn't mean they will win, because I watched Joe Burrow play great, damn near perfect, against the Washington Commanders, and they still lost because the defense gave up 38 points. So anything can happen in this situation. He could play a perfect game, have great stats, and his team still loses just because his defense couldn't stop Lamar in the offense. So who knows how that's going to go. But I do believe the Ravens are going to get this win. I expect the running game to be potent. I expect them to be productive. I expect Lamar to go off. And I expect the defense to put constant pressure on Joe Burrow to be perfect on every throw, which I do not believe he's going to be able to. I think Jamar Chase is going to be able to go off to an extent. I think T. Higgins is going to find his moments where he is productive. And I think the Ravens are going to give up some points. But I do not believe that they're good. This Ravens defense is going to give up enough points for Cincinnati to be able to overcome Baltimore. I think this could be a double-digit win for the Ravens. I'm going to say around 10. I'm going to give the Ravens the 31-21 victory. I hate picking predictions for the Ravens because I never know what Ravens team I'm going to get on a week-to-week basis. But I think 31 is a fair number to put up against this Bengals team. Meanwhile, I think that the Ravens defense is going to do a relatively decent job at limiting and trying to contain Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. But those guys are going to go out there and get theirs. And Joe Burrow has to play perfect, and he said it himself, and he's going to look to play perfect. So again, I think you're not going to completely shut down the Bengals offense. I think they'll be able to get at least 21 points. So yeah, I'm going to say 31-21. Ravens get the 31-21 victory here. They advance to 3-2 in the season, and then we can have that discussion about this year's Ravens through 5 games versus last year's Ravens through 5 games, how we feel about the team so far, what needs to happen next, and so on and so forth. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Pretty much wanted to get my take out. Obviously, with these preview videos or these preview streams, we're not here for long because we're just here to talk about the game, and then we dip. So before I do that, before I head on out, I'm going to read some of your comments, and then we'll just call it a day. Ready to end their season. I feel you on that, Nicholas, but I don't believe the Bengals defense, I don't believe the Bengals season ends if they go to 1-4. We've seen scenarios where teams have gone 1-4, 1-5, and they found a way to make it to the playoffs. They can go on a run. And if you look at Cincinnati's schedule, it's not necessarily difficult. The most difficult games will be the AFC North matchups. But other than that, I don't expect it to be too difficult to the point where they can't get it. I've looked at their schedule, and they got at least, I think they can get at least 5 wins. Like, in terms of non-divisional opponents, I think they can win 5 of those games. I'm around 4 or 5, but I think it's possible they can win at least 5 of those. At least 4 of those games, maybe 5, which would give them at least 5 wins, maybe 6. At that point, if they're sitting around 5 or 6 wins in totality, they need to win at least 3 of the 6 matchups they're going to have against divisional rivals. That'll put them at 9 wins. And if they're able to sweep one of those teams, whether it's Baltimore, whether it's Cleveland, whether it's Pittsburgh, that puts them at 10 wins. So I think it's very possible that the Bengals can still get back in this, even if they were to fall to Baltimore here. But we'll just have to wait and see on that. Don't forget about the Jacksonville Jaguars takeoff, because they had a season. They had to win it the last 7 weeks in Tennessee. Titans choked the division away. Absolutely. The Jacksonville Jaguars were like, what, 3-8 or 4-8? And they were pretty much left for dead. But then they took on the Ravens, pulled off an amazing comeback, won the game, and that propelled them to win like 6 out of the last 7 or something like that. And they found a way to make the playoffs and win the division. And then they took on the Chargers and won a playoff game. So anything could happen. We just have to see. I agree. Divisional games are always tougher. They're always the toughest. When you go up against a divisional opponent, it's always difficult. It's always tough. And it's always physical. That's just how it is when it comes to AFC North football. I'm not getting my hopes up, but Davante Adams. Yeah, I know at some point somebody was going to bring that up. I'll talk about that after I read all the comments. I agree with you. He is definitely not coming to Baltimore. Yeah, I'll talk about that. Passing game has not reached its max potential yet. Absolutely. They have a few steps they need to take in the passing game to reach that, which Baltimore always takes such a slow time to get to where they need to get to. That's why I tell people, come back in December to judge the Ravens. By then, they will have their offense figured out. Be for real, we're not going to be run heavy every game. Zay and Likely need to be involved, not just Henry in certain games. You're going to need to pass, and Cincinnati pass defense is bad and horrible. Absolutely. You're not going to be running the ball every single week and assuming he's going to be highly effective. Yeah, at some point you do have to pass the ball on a consistent basis, and you've got weapons on this team to throw the football to. Zay Flowers is a weapon. Isaiah Likely is a weapon. They like what they see from Bateman, and he's had his moments here and there. And Mark Andrews is a guy that they trusted. Now he's not having a great season production-wise. He's been doing a lot of blocking, and he's been fantastic at blocking, but he has not done anything production-wise. And the moment he had a chance to do something production-wise, he dropped a wide-open pass. So obviously, he's not off to a great start. But we do have to be fair. He had a near season-ending injury last year when he broke his leg. And then he had a car accident just to start off the season. So it's going to take Mark Andrews some time. It's going to take Mark Andrews some time. That's just how I look at it. But I do believe Mark Andrews will be productive this year. Yeah, limit the penalties, and our defense needs to generate turnovers. I agree with that. What's going on, Darth? Have you heard about the Davante Adams discussion? Yes, I will. I'll talk about it right now, just before I head on out. Who should I make a bet on for the Ravens, Bengals, Bills, Texans, Cowboys, Steelers? I'm not a betting man, I'm going to be honest. I wouldn't be the person you come to make a bet. And I don't even know what you're betting on in terms of who you're picking. Are you saying who should I make a bet on which team or which game? I don't know. If you're talking about the game to put a bet on in terms of stats and if you need certain numbers, I look at the Bills and Texans and say that's going to be a high octane game. If you're looking for someone to make a bet on, I'd probably look to make a bet on either the Ravens beating the Bengals or the Steelers beating the Cowboys. But again, I'm not really a huge betting man, so I wouldn't be the type of person that would be the person you come to make a choice for a bet. I will make sure you lose your money 100% of the time because I'm not a betting guy. I don't bet. So I wouldn't be the one to trust in that scenario. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have here. Before we head on out, I could already tell you guys talked about it, the Davante Adams situation. What are my thoughts on that? And yes, first of all, I hear damn near every Ravens news. So if something's happening regarding the Ravens, I'm going to hear about it. But yeah, I see some of y'all talking about the Davante Adams situation. My opinion on it, I don't really care. I really don't care. Because I don't have any expectations that Davante Adams is going to be a Raven. Now, if by some miracle he's a Raven, we're going to talk about it, we're going to react to it, we're going to discuss it. But I'm not interested in getting involved in this. I told you guys a long time ago, the Ravens don't usually get guys like this. In the history of our franchise, who have we traded for or signed that has been on the level of Davante Adams? At least when you sign them. Because the best signing we've had from a receiving standpoint would have to be either Derek Mason or Steve Smith Sr. And both of those guys were kind of more towards the end of their career. And I'm not saying Davante Adams doesn't fit that aspect because he is 31. But Davante is still one of the top tier receivers when he's given the opportunity to. So this would easily be the best receiver It's easily the best receiver to get. It'd be the best receiver the Ravens have arguably gotten in franchise history. But I'm not interested in debating this. Anquan Bolden's another good pick. But again, he wasn't in his prime when we got him as well. I'm glad he did what he did, but he was not in his prime when we got him. He still had something left in the tank. He was similar to Steve Smith Sr., where he still had something left in the tank. Now, the funny part is, he still had more left in the tank than Steve Smith Sr. did. Because Steve Smith Sr. only had, 3 years left in the tank. Anquan Bolden had, 5 years left in the tank. So, that was cool, but neither one of those guys were really in their prime. They were more older guys by then. But it is what it is in that situation. You get Davante Adams, that's definitely a game changer, but I'm not interested in playing these games. I know you guys like to work yourself up, get your hopes up high, and then when they don't, when your dreams don't come true, and all the energy and praying you put doesn't come to fruition because Davante Adams or another great player, whether it was Davante Adams, Stephon Diggs, whatever player you were looking for the Ravens to go get, when that offensive player doesn't end up in Baltimore to end up somewhere else, you guys immediately take your anger out on Eric DeCosta, and you know that tweet's coming where the Ravens were heavily involved or they were interested in him or they were trying to get him, yada, yada, yada. We know the tweet's coming. I'm not interested in getting involved in the games. I know I know how this is going to turn out. The second I heard that the Raiders were potentially trading Davante Adams, I've already convinced myself he's going to the Jets. It just makes the most sense. Reuniting Davante Adams with Aaron Rodgers is something I thought was going to happen for a while now. When we watched, at the end of the 21 season, when we watched Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers leave Lambeau Field hand in hand or shoulder to shoulder, when we watched them walk into the locker room at Lambeau Field, and we were like, this is the last time we're going to see these guys in the Packer jersey. In the back of my mind, I always sat back and said, these guys will find a way to play with each other again. And I think this is the opportunity. I don't think the Jets are going to let this slide. Did you watch the Jets offense? Did you see the Jets offense against the Denver Broncos? They invested everything into Aaron Rodgers. They need this to work out. I don't think the Jets are letting anybody steal Davante Adams for them. You bring back Aaron Rodgers, arguably Aaron Rodgers' favorite receiver. Between Davante Adams and Jordy Nelson, one of those two is Aaron Rodgers' all-time favorite receiver. You bring that guy back, who he has a repertoire with, who he knows how Davante Adams likes the ball thrown to him, where he's going to put it, the guy he has a connection with, because the connection between Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams is some of the best we've ever seen. They just have that connection. Aaron Rodgers knows exactly how to throw him the football. He knows where he wants the football, and he knows how to deliver it to him. Davante Adams knows when Aaron Rodgers gives him that look and how he's going to do it, he knows his habits, his mannerisms. He knows about that. They have that type of connection. It just makes sense that he's going to be a Jet. There's no way the New York Jets are going to sit back and let anybody else take him. In my mind, I believe there's three places where I can actively see Davante Adams going to. Number one is the Jets. Number two is the Saints. Number three is the Steelers. If you want to add a fourth team, you could look at a team like Green Bay. Maybe he goes back to Green Bay, but I'm not sure. A wild card team in this would be the Chiefs. But I don't see that happening because I don't think the Raiders are going to put their pride to the side and deliver Davante Adams to Kansas City. I just don't think they're going to entertain the Chiefs. Now, we've heard that they're just looking for the best possible package. So if they're going to go the business route, there's a good chance that Davante Adams in Kansas City. And if Davante Adams goes to Kansas City, you can already guarantee the three-peat for the Chiefs right now. We don't even need to waste time. If Davante Adams is a Kansas City Chief, three-peat, locked in, we're just waiting and enjoying football and waiting to see that moment when it happens. But I don't think the Raiders are willing to budge on that side. I think from a personal standpoint, they're not going to do it. So my three teams that I see Davante Adams going to, number one is the Jets, number two is the Saints, number three is the Steelers. Another wild card in that aspect, which could be number four, would be the Packers. But I don't have Ravens on my radar. I don't see it. And that's cool that he tweeted he tweeted out Edgar Allan Poe and tweeted out one of the quotes from Edgar. But Davante Adams has been vocal about how he's a troll on social media and how you should not take him seriously with his post. So you guys can buy into that aspect if you want. You guys can entertain yourself with the thought of Davante Adams. But I don't see it happening. Now, do I believe Davante Adams wants to come to the Ravens or wouldn't mind coming to the Ravens? Personally, I don't think he wouldn't mind. They asked him in an interview, And he was like, hey, man, I wouldn't mind going to Baltimore, getting 800 yards and potentially getting a ring with Lamar, as opposed to going to some other team and getting 1,700 yards. He's been on record saying that. So he wouldn't mind playing with Lamar. He's had a lot of high praise for Lamar on multiple occasions, and he said he wouldn't mind playing with them. So I think Baltimore is one of those teams that's on his radar because that would give him an opportunity to compete for a championship right now. But I just don't see the Ravens pulling the trigger on that. I don't see that deal being made, and I don't see the Jets in any scenario letting Devontae Adams get to anybody. The Jets might be willing to give up first-round picks. I'm dead serious. The Jets might be willing to give up first-round picks and some players to get Devontae Adams. The Jets are not letting Adams go to any other team because they know they need to make this situation work with Aaron Rodgers. And how can you make this work better for them than to give Aaron Rodgers one of his favorite receivers all time? You give Aaron Rodgers to reunite with Devontae Adams, the Jets' offense becomes immediately better. So I don't see Devontae Adams to the Ravens. I'm not entertaining the thought of Devontae Adams to the Ravens. I don't see that happening. I see him as a New York Jet. It just depends on what package the Jets are going to put up. What are they willing to give up? Because it seems like the Raiders want to give up the second-round pick and some extra compensation. I think the Jets are going to make sure nobody else gets him by giving up a first-round pick. And if they give up first-round picks, nah, no one's taking that. Ravens aren't giving up a first-round pick for Devontae Adams. If the Jets offer a first-round pick, they're going to get this. They're going to. So I think he's going to be a New York Jet. I just don't think it's going to happen with the Ravens. But, I feel free to entertain the thought, Ravens flock. I just don't see it happening. So I'm not, invested in it. It is what it is. I heard in the podcast the Cowboys are now down there. Yeah, they're down their fifth string D lineman. Micah Parsons isn't playing in that game. I would take the Steelers. I'd take the Steelers in that game. I think Devontae Adams puts us over the top. He would, but it's not going to happen. Adams going to either Jets, Packers, or Saints. I agree, John. I'm really high on the Jets getting him. Lamar wouldn't be able to throw the deep ball to Adams, though. If they work on it, he absolutely can. Because here's the thing, Lamar's never had a legitimate weapon that puts the threat on the defense and can get open down the field. We've always had issues with getting pass catchers that can generate separation and beat defenders one-on-one. You will give him a big targeted receiver, a physical receiver, that's able to win his matchup one-on-one and can fight for contact to get the football. You give Lamar Jackson that, he would be able to hit him. But we don't have it. We don't have that. You give him Devontae Adams, though, it will work out. This will be the first time Lamar has a receiver that caliber. It's hard for me to sit back and talk about Lamar throwing the deep ball. And I'm not saying he has been perfect with the deep ball. He's missed a lot of guys. He has. Throughout his career, he's missed a lot of guys down the field because there's been no chemistry there. He's missed them. At times, he's hit them perfectly in stride and they drop the ball, such as Week 5 against the Steelers last year. But he's never had that type of talent down the field that can get it that can get open and be as dominant as Devontae Adams is. You give him a weapon like that, he would be able to hit him down the field. When the others are struggling to get contact, to get separation in that moment, it's tough. He hasn't had a receiver this caliber. You give Lamar a receiver that caliber, trust me, the deep ball will come. Because he'll have those guys. And even if Devontae Adams getting double teamed, that's going to leave Zay Flowers wide open. And he's going to win those matchups. So that will help increase the deep ball between Lamar and Zay, who has chemistry with each other. Just please, anyone but the Chiefs. Again, I don't know if the Raiders are going to entertain that idea. Why the Steelers? The Steelers' offense, I think it's because their offense isn't as explosive they want it to be. You could tell Pittsburgh's been trying to get another receiver to pair up with George Pickens. They don't have that other receiver that's just going to be able to take some of the load off of George Pickens and make sure the double team doesn't always happen on them. They've been actively trying to get. We've been hearing over the last year, Pittsburgh's been trying to get another receiver to their team. They actively engaged in the Brandon Ayuk talks because they wanted him. And they're interested in Devontae Adams now. They're looking to give up anything. And the compensation for the Steelers, what they gave up, it was this close to happening. Brandon Ayuk had a choice. The reports came out. The Steelers were incredibly close to getting Brandon Ayuk. The package was already there. The deal was already there. What happened is the Niners came to him and said, look, Either this is what we're offering you. Either you sign that deal right now or we're trading you to the Steelers. He signed the deal. So there was nothing the Steelers could do there. But now this opportunity comes up on the trade when they've been looking for that other receiver and you don't think the Steelers are going to take advantage, they absolutely will take advantage. No question they will take advantage. Mark Andrews' breakout game incoming. He always plays well against the Bengals, so we'll see. And yeah, it is because they traded for Ayuk. They're going to try again. They absolutely are going to try again. Lamar and Dak got the same deep ball throw, and playoffs jitters. Just give Henry the ball. Here's the thing. In terms of the deep ball, I would not say Lamar and Dak have the same deep ball. I think Lamar has been decent in the deep ball. If I had to argue who's been better with the deep ball, it would have to be Dak, but Dak's always had better weapons than Lamar. If you look at the receivers that he's been able to throw to and the talent he's had offensively, Dak's always had weapons to throw to and guys that can beat the defense and get open down the field consistently. Lamar has not had that. So I'd say Dak's a little bit more consistent in throwing the deep ball because he's had better receivers, and so those opportunities have come up, whereas Lamar, he hasn't had that. But I feel like if you give Lamar a true number one receiver, we will get to see whether or not he can get it done, which I believe he can. And then playoff jitters. Look, the playoff thing with Lamar is becoming way too funny. It's becoming way too funny to an extent. Especially because of how last year went. I get we want to do these playoff jitters, but for some reason, everyone just seems to forget the Texans game existed. If you've watched how people brought up, look, we know, early on in Lamar Jackson's career, he was not good in the playoffs. Nobody's arguing that. As a rookie, as the youngest quarterback to start in the playoff game at 21 years old, he did not play well against the Chargers. We'll give you that. Following year MVP season, the whole team didn't play well, but Lamar made his mistakes in the game. In terms of what he did wrong, he made some mistakes in the game. We got you. The whole team didn't play well, but Lamar made his mistakes. Then year 3, 2020, he played decently solid in the Titans game. They came back down 10, won that game in Tennessee. He didn't have a great outing against the Bills. But again, it's not all Lamar's fault. I'm not even like bringing up the context here, because I'll bring up the context in every game there. I'm just speaking from Lamar's perspective. He didn't have a great game against the Bills. He did not. The pick six ultimately changed the entire aspect of the game. Not to mention he got knocked down in the fourth quarter. So I have no idea what Lamar would have done in that fourth quarter. So I get the aspect of it. But people forget there was a 2-year span where Lamar Jackson didn't play in the playoffs. So these playoff jitters we want to talk about, they were clearly there early on in his career. But then he had a 2-year period where he did not play in the playoffs because he was hurt. And then it comes to last year. They were in the divisional round against a Texans team. Lamar played great. That's his best playoff performance to date. He showed he can play well in the playoffs. Which leads me to the AFC Championship game. In the first half of the AFC Championship game, Lamar was playing well. It felt like Lamar, no problems anymore in the playoffs. He's playing well. He had that amazing touchdown to Zay Flowers. He was playing well. Second half of that game, he was not playing well. However, there was a drive where Lamar Jackson and the Ravens offense got it together and went down the field and had an opportunity to make it a 3-point game. Zay Flowers fumbles at the 1-yard line. If Zay Flowers does not fumble at the 1-yard line, that's 2 touchdown passes for Lamar. It's a 3-point game. Everything resets, with that being, 14 or 13 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So my thing about it is, we keep talking about the jitters that he had in year 1, or year 2, year 1, year 2, and year 3. He's in year 7 now. People just forgot the Texans game happened. He has shown he can perform well in the playoffs. He can have a great game in the playoffs. He showed that last year. He did. He showed that last year. But he's not perfect. If you're going to tell me at the end of the day, the takeaway from that game was, oh, it's the same old Lamar, he's got jitters, as opposed to the team again had an opportunity in the AFC Championship game and they blew it with a couple mistakes. If your takeaway is Lamar is still the same old guy in years 1 through 3 that had those moments, I would just disagree with you. Because Lamar in the first half of the AFC Championship game was playing great. The second half he was playing poorly. And then he got it together, and then Zay Flowers fumbled the ball, and then all hell broke loose, and then Lamar finishes that fourth quarter terribly by throwing that pick into triple coverage. So again, I get these ideas with the jitters, but I don't know if I could fully follow that aspect. And comparing it to Dak, when Dak has not gotten to an NFC title game, and Dak's had, this is the thing, Lamar has not had the best of talent around him offensively in these playoff games. Dak has. Dak has had some great talent offensively around him, and he still performed like that. So I think it's unfair when Lamar Jackson gets to an NFC title game, not NFC, an AFC championship game. Meanwhile, Dak has not, and he's had better talent to throw to than Lamar. I think it's unfair to make that comparison in some cases. That's just me personally. And I'm not saying it's all on Dak. There's reasons why the Cowboys have lost the playoff games they had. Because their defense in some of those games did nothing well. Including last year. Last year was the defense more than Dak Prescott. But Dak Prescott did throw 2 picks, one of them being the pick 6. So I get it. But it is what it is. Ravens are going to blow out the Bengals. The defense and the O-line are looking better and better. This won't be close. Bengals season is over after this game. We'll just have to see. I don't think the Bengals season is over after this game, though. Because, again, it's week 5. We can't make these assessments this early. And if you look at it, the Bengals actually have the easiest schedule in the division. Baltimore's schedule is difficult. Cleveland has the toughest schedule, technically. And Pittsburgh's right there, too. Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and Baltimore all have tough schedules. Cincinnati's schedule is actually relatively easy, given their certain circumstance. So to sit back and say that the Bengals season is over if they go 1-4, I don't fully agree with it. I took a look at their schedule. I think there's at least 5 non-division wins they can get. So that can at least put them at 6 wins. And if they can split with everybody in the division, that gives them 3 wins. That puts them at 9-8 at best. And if they can sweep one of these teams, whether it's Baltimore, whether it's Cleveland, whether it's Cincinnati, not Cincinnati, whether it's Pittsburgh, that gets them to 10 wins. I think there's a possibility that this team, even if they drop to 1-4, the margin of error becomes little. But I think a possibility of them getting back into the season and finishing with 9 or 10 wins and potentially sneaking into the playoffs is still there. I will not end the Bengals season unless they have at least 6 losses early on in the season. If they're we face off against Cincinnati afterwards on Thursday Night Football in like a month from now. If they're sitting here with 6 losses by the time they come to Baltimore, we're having a different conversation. Kirk Cousins joins the 500-yard club. Yeah, that was awesome by him. Shout out to Kirk Cousins. Mahomes spooked him. Mahomes did not spook him. I don't get this idea that they're playing the game. Okay, I swear to God, they're playing the game. Stop acting like these guys are having nightmares about players. There was no spooking there. Like, let's just stop this. If anything, it was mental aspects that hurt them from themselves. It was them trying to not overthink things. It was them doing the most. It had nothing to do with Mahomes and the Chiefs. And this aspect that Mahomes is just out here like the boogeyman, just putting fear in everybody's hearts. Y'all need to stop this. Everybody knows he's the best in the game. We don't have to deny that. He's the best in the game with the greatest tight end to ever play this game and arguably the greatest offensive-minded coach we've seen in history. We get it. They are a dynasty and tough to beat. But this idea that you got players out here in fear for these guys, just stop it. They understand the threat that these guys bring, and they're not going to undermine it. They're the best. But no one's sitting here getting spooked by this person or being in fear by this person. They are playing a game. Their lives are not on the line. If it's different if you're stepping into the ring and boxing this dude. I could have fear for another guy if he's undefeated. If he's had 30 matches as a professional boxer. He's 30-0 with 27 knockouts. Yeah, I'd fear that guy because I'm stepping in the ring with that guy. That's actual fear when your life's on the line. But a guy throwing a football, guys, stop it. There's no fear. There's no aspect of, he spooked him. What caused the Ravens to lose that game is things that have cost them for years. Legitimate things that have cost them for years. Same old mental mistakes. Moving away from what works. The Ravens were going up against a mid-tier run defense in Kansas City. You're the best running team in football. You run the ball 6 times with your backs. That's a huge contributing factor. That has nothing to do with being spooked. That's nothing to do with Lamar. You had the best running game in football and you ran the ball 6 times with your backs. That shows me you didn't believe in them. And that's a big part of why Gus Edwards is not here. They didn't believe in them. And if you're looking at it, it's clear as day that they wanted Derrick Henry. They fought to get Derrick Henry because they didn't believe in Gus Edwards. Clear as day. And I'm telling you, if Derrick Henry was in the AFC Championship game last year, they're not giving him 6 carries because that's Derrick Henry. But they didn't believe in Gus Edwards. That's why they ran the ball 6 times. They didn't trust their running game to beat Kansas City at all. Despite the fact that Kansas City is a mid-tier run defense last year, they did not trust Gus Edwards to handle that. which is why they actively tried to trade for Derrick Henry during the season. And that's why they tried to try to cover it up as if it was going to help out by getting Dalvin Cook, even though they had no plans to really use him. But there were factors into it. You make mental mistakes, turning the ball over. Zay Flowers getting the ball punched out at the 1 yard line. That costs you games. And then you start making more and more mistakes because one guy makes a mistake and then another guy's making the mistake and then it just adds up. This is what it is. Chris Jones spooked him. I don't think that's the same case there. Actually, if anything, it wouldn't be Chris Jones spooking Lamar. It'd be Chris Jones spooking Ronnie Stanley because he's the one that gave up, that got cooked on that block that ultimately led to Lamar getting strip sacked early on in the game. I wouldn't say Chris Jones in that situation. I don't think anyone spooked anybody. It's just the Ravens making mental mistakes. It's the same story with the Ravens. It's been like that for years. It's why they've lost a lot of football games that they've had double-digit leads in. They start making mistakes and they can't get out of their own heads. Reason Lamar gets hated is because he's a 2-time MVP and people can't stand a dual threat being an MVP and being considered a top quarterback in the league. I guess. I don't know. I'm already tired with the constant discussions about the hate. At this point, Lamar, he is what he is. Okay, we already know he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. It's about whether or not he's going into the Hall with the ring or not. That's just the conversation at this point. And they want the quarterbacks who can throw the ball and have these crazy highlight plays. It is what it is. Dak had a plethora of weapons from Jason Witten, Des Bryant, and Alan Hearns to Cole Beasley, Michael Gallup, and CeeDee Lamb, all in 9-year span, and he still couldn't get it done in the postseason. Yeah, that's been a criticism for Dak having the weapons and not getting it done. Kirk Cousins beat the primetime game accusations. He's doing a great job doing that. So y'all think y'all gonna beat our Chiefs this time around? We lost Rice and we still ain't shook. That's a good question. I can't really answer that question because again the Ravens haven't fully gotten into where they are. I would actually rather see how we do in December once we fully establish ourselves because the way Baltimore utilized Derrick Henry in that opening game in Kansas City pissed me off so bad. This is the thing with it. Baltimore has the capability of beating Kansas City, but they can never just stick to the identity that works for them best, and they keep trying to do things that works in the favors of the Chiefs. They keep moving away from the running game, even though it's their bread and butter, and they keep trying to force things that aren't going to work in certain situations. Not to mention, every time they need to execute, the team's not doing it. Go back to that 4th down play we had in Kansas City. Nelson Aguilar was supposed to block the one guy that was open so Zay Flowers can go pick up the 1st down. Nelson Aguilar has a brain fart, doesn't do it. It's the same mental mistakes there. We get called on illegal formations 5 times in that game. We don't learn our lesson. John Harbaugh wasting timeouts on challenges. We don't learn our lesson. It's a lot of the mental mistakes that we tend to do. If those mental mistakes can be cleaned up, I think we can beat you guys. The problem is we keep making the same mistakes under our head coach. And the fact that it's constantly happening in some of these moments is ultimately what leads to us losing consistently. Does Baltimore have the capability of beating Kansas City? Absolutely. Do they have the talent to beat Kansas City? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, when it comes to these games, it comes to execution, it comes to decision making, and it comes to the game plan. As well as coaching in key situations. And in those aspects, Kansas City's flawless and Baltimore's filled with mistakes. When it comes to execution, Kansas City's always able to execute when they need to. Baltimore will be shaky with their execution. When it comes to decision making, especially from our head coach, Andy Reid's not making mental mistakes like that. John Harbaugh's consistently making mental mistakes. When it comes to the game plan, whether it's offensively or defensively, Chiefs usually know what they want to do offensively. They stick to the identity that works for them, and they usually run it. Baltimore's constantly trying to change their identity on the fly. That's not going to work when you're going up against a Chiefs team that knows what they're doing. And then overall communication with the quarterback, with the coach. You don't have any of those issues with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. There's been moments where we've had those issues with Lamar and Harbaugh, as well as Lamar and having miscommunication with certain guys on the field. We lack discipline, and that's another aspect that constantly takes away from us. If these aspects can be fixed, Baltimore would be able to get it. But the one thing I'm looking forward to, if we have another opportunity against Kansas City, is I want to see if Baltimore can learn from their mistakes. Because the way we utilize Derrick Henry in week 1 is not the way we're utilizing Derrick Henry right now. The way we utilize Derrick Henry against Kansas City is not the way the Ravens utilize Derrick Henry against the Bills. We did not work to the strengths of Derrick Henry when we faced off against Kansas City. We worked to the strengths of Derrick Henry when we faced off against the Bills. So I feel if we have an opportunity to play against Kansas City again and we work to the strengths of Derrick Henry, I feel we have a much better chance to beat Kansas City. And I think we'll have an opportunity. And I think they could pull it off. But a lot of things need to happen for the Ravens. And a lot of things need to change in terms of fixing those main aspects. We have a long season to go. And the opportunities will be there. We'll just have to wait and see. I hope Lamar gets into the 500-yard club. Probably not in passing yards. His best passing game was 445 yards against the Colts. But in terms of him being in the 500-yard clubs, he's technically at 500 total yards twice. That Colts game was 500 total yards. And then the playoff game against the Titans, he had 500-plus yards as well. So, I mean, if you're talking about total yards for an individual, Lamar has eclipsed 500 total yards by himself on multiple occasions. But in terms of 500 passing yards, that's not happening in this offense. It's just not. Lamar missed that throw at the end. If you're talking about the throw to Zay Flowers, that was a miscommunication there. Zay Flowers was not the intended target. What happened there is the intended target on that play was Rashad Bateman. Bateman ran into the defense. What Bateman needed to do, and what Lamar was waiting for Bateman to do, because there was an open space right in the middle of the end zone. Bateman's running this way. He should have cut it back, but he kept running into the defense. Lamar was waiting for Bateman to cut it back. He didn't. So while he's waiting for Bateman, he sees at the back of the end zone at the last second that Zay Flowers is open in the back of the end zone. So now he changes from Rashad Bateman to a Zay Flowers. And he saw Flowers, and he expected Flowers to sit on that. Receivers have said this. In that moment, when you're at the back, right in the middle of the zone, in the back of the end zone at that point, you sit on that play. Zay Flowers kept going. Lamar threw it in the zone where Flowers was supposed to stay. He did not stay. And that's what led to it. Lamar's intended target was Bateman. Bateman did not read the defense right. He should have cut it back. Lamar would have hit him right in the middle of the field for the touchdown. But Bateman just kept going into the defense for some random reason. Now, this is funny. The exact same situation happened against the Cowboys, where Bateman had that opportunity. And instead of running towards the defense, he cuts it back, finds himself wide open, right into space. Lamar hits him for a touchdown. Had Bateman done that in week 1, that's a touchdown. So Lamar said the intended receiver was Bateman. He was looking at Bateman. He was trying to wait to see for Bateman to come back around to get open in that space. He didn't do it. And then he notices Zay Flowers in the back of the end zone last minute. Throw it to where you would expect the receiver to sit back there and wait. But for some reason, Zay Flowers kept going. It leads to an incompletion. Now, I will say this. Miscommunication can't happen in that type of moment. You got to be on the same page. Miscommunications cannot happen in that type of situation. So part of that's on Lamar, part of that's on Zay Flowers. You cannot have miscommunication in that type of situation. Zay Flowers should have known better to sit in the middle of the zone right there when he's wide open and no one's paying attention to him. Don't keep going. Because he kept going. And people were like, well, you should throw the ball where he kept going. Go back and take a look at it. If Lamar would have thrown it right where Zay Flowers is running to, there's 2 Chiefs defenders right in the middle of that pass. Lamar would have got picked off and the game would have been over. So, no. That was a mistake by Zay Flowers. There was a miscommunication there, and it led to the mistake and the incompletion. It is what it is. So, I get it. People are going to blame the missed throw on Lamar, but again, it's a mistake by Bateman, which, again, he was put in the exact same situation 2 weeks later against the Cowboys and made the right choice. And it was a mistake by Zay Flowers. And it's a miscommunication between Lamar and his receivers. You can't have that. But it is what it is. Looks like the pressure got to him. In that situation, part of that, I wouldn't really say, if you're talking about mental pressure, I wouldn't say that mental pressure got to him. If you want to say physical pressure, I'll agree with you. Because Lamar himself said it, he had to make that decision fast. Because we had Justice Hill covering Chris Jones. We had Justice Hill covering Chris Jones. Lamar did not have much time to make a decision. Bateman did not cut back like he was supposed to, and Zay Flowers is open and kept running. Lamar had to make a choice. So if you're talking about mental pressure, I would disagree. If you're talking about actual physical pressure on the field, yes, he had that physical pressure. Chris Jones was right next to him because Justice Hill was blocking for his life. And Justice Hill wasn't going to last long against Chris Jones. So he had to get that ball out quickly. But it's a miscommunication, something that can't happen. Because he'll fall on the quarterback at the end of the day. So Lamar's just got to bite the bullet on that and move on. Not gonna lie, it would be tough beating you guys a third time, but I think we pull it off. Of course, again, if I was a betting man, I'd probably put my money on Kansas City to win that, just because again, Baltimore can't get out of their own way. Until Baltimore shows the world they can get out of their own way, people are not gonna pick them. Baltimore has all the talent in the world and the capabilities of beating the Chiefs. But until the Ravens get out of their own way and stop making those same mental mistakes that they do in big games, and Harbaugh stops getting out coached by Andy Reid, the Chiefs will beat us every single time. And it's going to be because we continue to make the same mental mistakes every time against Kansas City. If we stop making those mental mistakes, we can beat you guys. But I personally don't think that's going to happen, because I don't think Harbaugh learns from his lessons. If we have Bill Belichick as our head coach right now, which again, I'm not saying I want Bill Belichick, but if we had a different guy as our head coach, I think those mental mistakes aren't going to happen, and they'd be much better prepared to take on Kansas City. But because John Harbaugh is who he is, he's the same guy that makes the same mistakes over for the last decade, and has not changed since he's been here in Baltimore since 2008, and he always gets out-coached. Even before Mahomes stepped foot in, he always gets out-coached by Andy Reid. So nothing has changed with Harbaugh in 17 years. I don't expect anything to change. It's just going to come down to a Lamar save us situation. And Lamar's not going to save you every single time. And if you're expecting Lamar to save you the Chiefs when that guy, number 15, is on the opposite side of the field, it's not going to happen. I didn't know last night's game was Matt Ryan's Ring of Honor. Yes, it was. Ironically, the man who threw for 500 yards was the man that came back 33-0 against him and retired him. Yeah, that's exactly. It's crazy how everything happened in that situation. It is what it is. Not only that, but Kirk Cousins surpassed Matt Ryan's previous record for most passing yards in the game by a Falcons quarterback in franchise history. So he surpassed what was originally Matt Ryan's record during Matt Ryan's Ring of Honor day. That's crazy. But it is what it is. Anyway, guys, that's pretty much all I have here. Wasn't expected to stay too long, but somehow, every time I do these streams, I end up getting like nearly 90 minutes. I don't know why. I would be like sitting there saying, I'm going to be here for half an hour, and next thing you know, I'm there for 90 minutes. But I appreciate it. I just wanted to speak some of those things. We spoke about what the Ravens need to do to win the game. I think the Ravens are going to be able to do that. They're going to win this game, go 3-2. In terms of the Devontae Adams thing, I don't buy into it. You guys are free to buy into it. And in terms of some of the conversations here, in terms of the conversations, the Ravens, again, have to learn to get out of their own way, and they have to fix a lot of their mistakes. I think, again, execution, game planning, and decision-making are the three things the Ravens need to fix if they're ever going to beat Kansas City. If not, Kansas City will just beat them again. The Ravens have the talent. The Ravens have the capability of beating the Chiefs, but those three aspects, they lose every single time. Because when it comes to decision-making, execution, and game planning, and I can even add communication there. The Chiefs are never bad in that situation come January. Baltimore's consistently been bad, both in the regular season and the postseason, in those four aspects. And that falls on everybody. It falls on the head coach, it falls on your coordinators, that falls on the players, it falls on your quarterback. So the team as a whole needs to grow and learn from that, which I don't think they're going to do under Harbaugh. So I already know how this season is going to end for the Ravens. I'm just hoping that they prove me wrong and learn from their mistakes. Because if they don't prove me wrong and learn from their mistakes, it's going to end the same way it did last year. Most likely at the hands of the Chiefs. But, it is what it is. Maybe the Ravens learn, maybe they don't. But we'll just have to find out. It's only week 5. I can't think about a potential matchup against Kansas City right now because we're not even sure we're going to get that far. We're focused on the Bengals this week, so we'll see what happens. Anyway, you guys, appreciate you tuning in. Appreciate you stopping by. This has been the Ravens and Bengals week 5 preview. We'll see what happens on Sunday. Other than that, you guys enjoy the rest of your night. Be sure to stay safe, and peace out.